We are getting going. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Whether you're watching live on Facebook and YouTube or watching the archive, we're very excited to announce a brand new episode debuting right now. Plugged into hearing health with doctors, respectively, Michelle Schechter and Eric Sandler. I'm not sure why I'm here, but you're stuck with me, folks. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to relay your questions. If you have questions about hearing health, hearing aids, hearing protection, hearing cleanliness, hearing voices, no, that we're not addressing. But hearing ringing, absolutely. I've had bouts with tinnitus for years and years. I don't know why. Married, 11 kids, 19 grandkids, second great grandchild on the way. I have no idea why my ears are ringing. Oh, I've been playing drums 56 years. And this isn't just for musicians, right? Michelle and Eric, anyone that goes to clubs or even restaurants are just so loud now that with my hearing issues, I've gotten real good at reading lips in 8 languages, because if I'm sitting across from someone and there's that cacophony of conversation and a tiled restaurant roof, floor, ceiling, it's really hard to hear. But first, why don't you introduce yourselves and also mention your podcast, please, where people can follow you. You're tagged in the description, but why don't you each give a brief introduction about yourselves, and then we'll dive right in.
Go ahead.
All right. I am Dr. Michelle Schechter. I'm an audiologist at the Hearing Center along with Eric. And we see a whole range of patients, ranging from pediatrics who are a couple of days old all the way to adults that range past 100 years old. And
Wow.
we see people for all different sorts of hearing issues, hearing trouble, ringing, balance issues. But I'd say I mostly specialize in the fields of auditory processing, how the brain actually processes the sound that we hear. And I really enjoy seeing the veterans after they serve.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And thank you indeed to all the veterans. If it weren't for them, we couldn't be entrepreneurs or artists, musicians, dancers, whatever we do. So that's a great shout out. Eric, how about you?
I'm Dr. Eric Sandler. I'm an audiologist also at the Hearing Center in New Jersey. We together have a podcast called Hear Us Out, where we explore how sound and hearing influence the human experience. So we speak with artists, musicians, doctors, Broadway stars, sound engineers, sound designers. So we have a wide range of guests, and I specifically enjoy doing audiology for and with musicians. That's an area that I've been focusing on the last couple of years.
That's awesome. Well, all of that kind of triggers a question in my head that I did not have queued up in my brain, that I remember anyway. And that is with in the area of the arts and music, sound design, musicians, engineers, everything that you mentioned, do you folks see a common thread of people who have certain complaints the most, whether it's tinnitus, whether it's just loss of hearing? Is there a common thread? Because I believe one of the common myths is, oh, it's the volume, but it's not just the volume, right? It's surprisingly to people, it's often really loud, low frequencies, because as kids watching cartoons, we're used to seeing the opera singer break the glass. So we think it's the high. Like, can you kind of tap into both those issues?
Do you want to take that, or you want me to jump in?
You jump in first.
All right. So when it comes to the most common things we hear from musicians, first of all, tinnitus, ringing in the ears. Whenever your ears get overstimulated, it's not uncommon to get ringing in the ears. What we also hear a lot is, I hear, but I don't understand. And that's very common with high frequency hearing loss, which is very common with age and noise exposure.
My wife says it's from not paying attention. I hear, but I don't understand.
So we have a built-in shutoff switch that age-related hearing loss affects higher frequencies first, or more so than lower frequencies. Female voices tend to be more higher pitched than male voices. So it's kind of this running joke in our office that men tend to have a built-in shutoff switch. They stop listening to their wives, but we have an anatomical explanation for it.
That's funny. You'll have to hear my wife's voice one day. Michelle, do you want to chime on that as well? And regarding what Eric did say about the tinnitus and the overstimulation, often I hear the ringing the most when it's most quieted around me. Like sometimes in the middle of the night, I'm trying to go to sleep and it's just like so loud. And sometimes it even feels like I almost feel a physical sensation as if someone's blowing in my ear.
Absolutely. So the most common reason that we have the tinnitus, they're both correct, is because of hearing loss. When the brain realizes that at some point in time their hearing is better than the hearing is at its current point, the brain wonders, where did the sound go? Why am I missing the sound? I had it before. So it has to compensate, and it creates this own sound in your head that most of the time other people can't hear. So, and it comes in the forms of ringing, buzzing, humming, chirping. It can vary depending on the person. No real rhyme or reason for that. But it is most common in quiet because there's no external sound for the person to focus on. When somebody's out and about, they're watching TV, the fan is on, they're having a conversation, the brain can focus on somebody else or another sound, and it drowns out that ringing. But when it's quiet, there's nothing else for the brain to listen to or have as a distraction, so the ringing goes up. Very often we ask our patients, does it keep you awake at night? And a lot of them say it does because there's nothing to distract it.
Interesting. So is the brain actually, is it like a replacement mechanism for the loss of hearing?
Essentially, it's creating this own sound in your head to compensate for it. So you said it exactly right. And the
Interesting.
frustrating thing about tinnitus is that it's this feedback cycle where you have this sound and then you think about it and then it gets louder and then you think about it more. And it's this constant loop that we're trying so hard to break because it can be pretty debilitating for people.
You know what? Sometimes I get so micro, or would it be macro, focused on it that I actually put in the effort to see how many octaves am I hearing of that tone. Like, it's bizarre, and that almost kind of gives me something to do that makes it less annoying, irritating, and frustrating, because now I have an activity. It's like, do I hear ooh, like, what do I hear in there? And sometimes I do hear, and this has only been for about the last year, if that, where I've said to my wife, do you hear that low hum? Like, is there something making a low hum? Is the air? And there's nothing on.
Mhm.
And I hear like a real low, really low, but interesting. Going
And
back to that. Oh, you want to chime in on that,
yeah,
Eric?
we will hear all different sorts of descriptions for tinnitus, whether it's like you're
Oh,
describing a low hum versus a high pitched tone versus a whistle, uh, as Michelle was saying. And it's a perception, so it varies from individual to individual, and we as the clinicians are trying to understand what the perception is of our patients. Now, with a lot of musicians, not all, but a lot, that ringing sound, if it's higher pitch, can center somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 hertz, because that's the region of hearing that tends to get most damage from noise exposure.
so it gets replaced first with this.
Yeah, we oftentimes see that the frequencies where we hear the poorest
Yeah.
is where the pitch of the ringing can be centered around. Not always, but it is very common to present that way.
Interesting. I want to ask the audience to chime in. Not only tell us where you're watching from, but tell us, do you have tinnitus? Do you have ringing of the ears or anything like that? And if so, how long have you had it? And are you a musician? Is it just from playing loud music in the car or going to clubs, or what do your in-laws, what do you think it's from? Um, it's an interesting topic to me because I've had it for so many years. I've probably had it 35 years that I can remember, and I'm
Mhm.
62. So I
Yeah,
started getting it in my, I guess that would be
mid-20s.
my, yeah,
Yeah.
late 20s. And I started playing drums. And here's a lesson for the viewers that are musicians. I started playing shortly before 7 years old. And I remember one day I was probably 7.5, 8 at the music store. I probably told you folks this story before, but my mom took me for my lesson at the music store. They had a fishbowl of earplugs. They said,
Mhm.
"Hey, do you want to try these, protect you?" I'm like, "Sure, what do I know? I'm a kid." But it literally felt like playing with fingers in my ears. Like like I had a wetsuit on or like I was underwater, and I couldn't hear the tones of my drums and cymbals. I couldn't effectively achieve good dynamics. It was just so stifling that that was the end of that. And it wasn't until maybe the last 15 years they started to make headway with ear protection that blocked out certain frequencies and stuff. But by then I had so much damage. I'm like, yeah, it's uncomfortable. I can't seem to get them where they're just right. Like, I'm willing to try anything to protect what I have less, but I also want to enjoy playing by hearing what I'm supposed to hear. So I'm curious if my lesson is, don't wait until you're my age to start protecting your hearing, because there are a lot better products. And throughout this series, we'll get into some of those things. And I know that one of the other things we mentioned we'd talk about, which we don't have to get into yet, but would be in-ear monitors. And I don't use in-ear monitors either. I have a big PA system in my studio, and I just blow wind. It's like I'm playing at a gig. You know, if I had a hat on, it would probably fly off my head from the speakers. So not smart at all. So I'm hoping people will learn from this. But if you have tinnitus or humming or anything, chime in and tell us a little about your story. And if you have questions for Doctors Michelle and Eric, let us know. But let's go back to the myth of what frequencies cause the damage. You mentioned which frequencies get lost first, and then we'll pull up a map of the ear, and we could talk a little bit about the anatomy and what's being affected by what. And whoever wants to take that regarding the frequencies, go for it.
We see a wide range of patterns of hearing loss, and I don't have an image here, but there's usually a graph of hearing that we go based off of, where we talk about low pitches, middle pitch, and high pitch. And as Eric had said, most commonly we see a slope where your low pitches and middle pitches are relatively good. And then as we get towards those high pitches, the hearing starts to slope off. That's almost always related to age or noise exposure. Then we have what's called a cookie bite loss, which is often with people who may have been born with hearing loss due to either just because or a genetic condition, where it actually looks kind of like a bite of a cookie, where it's this little drop that comes right back up. So that often affects the middle pitches. And then we have a reverse slope, where actually it's the low frequencies that are affected the most. And we see that a lot with conditions like Meniere's disease, for any of our listeners who have heard of that, where the high pitches are actually great and the low pitches are the ones that are affected. But we see all ranges, all sorts of funky losses, and it's our job to figure out what to do with them next.
Let's talk about Meniere's disease. Yeah. But Eric, first go ahead and chime in.
So give you a kind of a quick explanation on Meniere's disease. That is a collection of 4 symptoms, where if you have Meniere's, you have a roaring kind of low-pitched tinnitus, you have low-frequency hearing loss that can fluctuate, you have dizziness that tends to be really, really bad. What did I say, Michelle? What? The fullness of the ear. Yeah. So where your ear feels clogged. So Meniere's is those 4 symptoms presenting together. But I think it's important to understand a little bit about the anatomy and the way that the ear works to understand hearing loss and what is actually happening. So if you look at the graph that's right in front of you, you see the outer ear, which is the part of the ear that we all see. And then there's the ear canal. At the end of the ear canal is your eardrum, which if you ever have somebody look in your ears with a little medical light called an otoscope, they're looking at your eardrum. That eardrum then vibrates in response to the sound going in. And if you look, connected to the eardrum are 3 of the tiniest bones in your body. They would fit on your pinky nail. Wow. Those bones are taking the sound, the physical waves of sound, and transmitting them into the organ for hearing. That's that kind of purple shape toward the right side of that graph. Inside that organ for hearing are the receptor cells. They receive the sound and they're set into motion and they vibrate. Those cells then convert the acoustic, the physical energy of sound into an electrical impulse that travels along the nerve up to the brain.
And is that like that beige squid sort of shaped thing, the receptors, and then
that's the nerve. That's the nerve going up to the brain. So what happens within that organ for hearing, it's shaped kind of like a snail shell.
Yeah.
Toward the opening are the cells that respond to higher pitch sound. As you get further and further along, you get lower and lower pitch cells. So all of the sound you hear your entire life is rolling over those high pitched cells. That's why they get damaged first. It's
Oh.
kind of like a piano that's rolled up, and each key is responding to a different frequency range. So when you have hearing loss, those cells are no longer receiving the sound that they used to, whether they're damaged or die off. That's why you have hearing loss. Now, as sound gets louder, other cells can start to respond. So the cells that responded to, let's say, 4,000 hertz, if they get damaged or die off, well, if the sound is loud enough, maybe your cells that typically respond to 3,500 will start responding to a 4,000 hertz stimulus. So
Oh, interesting.
that
But
kind of
then,
gives it an idea of the anatomy.
and could that in turn, by turning it up, that in turn can affect other cells and receptors because you're trying to compensate, and then it's just a domino effect of constant debilitating hearing effectiveness?
Well, you have to be careful with any sort of loud sound. You can cause damage with any loud sound, and we can certainly go over that. But if the sound is a 85 dB A scale, which also we could talk about, or softer, you're unlikely to cause damage from noise exposure.
Okay. What do you know what the dB level is of someone just sitting at a drum set and playing a beat, not going crazy, not hitting hard, just some basic playing? Do you know about how loud that is? Any idea?
If I had, I don't know. Eric, do you?
I would guess the hi-hats are probably going to be coming in at about 105 dB-ish, around there.
Okay.
Um,
So
you're
then the cymbals are probably about the same or more if they're being crashed. A bell on a ride might be a little more, and then the
the
drums might be the same or more, but they have a lot of the lower frequencies compared to the.
So one thing to think about when it comes to sound, very, very high pitches and very, very low pitches, there's more physical energy for your
Mhm.
ear to be able to detect it. Mid-frequency sounds like 1,000 to 2,000 hertz, your ear can detect those sounds with less physical energy
Oh, that makes
being
sense.
driven.
Yeah.
Uh, the hi-hats are what are going to cause you the most risk on stage in an unamplified setting.
And that's why I have so much more hearing loss in this ear.
We will oftentimes ask stage musicians, where are you on the stage
Yeah.
relative to the wedge monitors and relative to the drummer?
Yeah.
Do you
I always
perceive that?
yeah,
Do you
just
notice that, or is that what you've been told, or do you actually notice more hearing loss on
I
that
kinda
side?
deduced that over time, but then, I kinda started to be more conscious of it because I have not played, like, in a band for many, many years. I do jam with people and stuff, and when I was in a band, it was the guitar player's stuff that was to the left, so I kind of attributed it to that, but it's been so many years where, as my wife says, I'm just playing with myself, and
Mhm.
I have my big speaker cabinets off to the side. So all things being equal, the one most common denominator is the hi-hat on that side. I'm a right-handed drummer, so it's over there.
Mhm.
Um, Not that there isn't on my big drum setup loud stuff all around me, but that just gets so much. So it makes sense, especially with everything you're saying, just years and years. In fact, my hi-hats are so loud that when I got them in 1982 or 3, they're a mixed match pair that I
Mhm.
got from Carmine Apiece. So most people watching probably know Carmine, know who he is. I traded something for with him, and the top is a very heavy Zildjian Brilliance, and the bottom is a K, and they're 15 inches. And that top is so loud, it sounded like a ride cymbal. Like it literally took me a month or so to get used to. My bandmates complaining. It's like, they're new. Let me get used to them.
Mhm.
And big thunder. My power might go off.
Oh,
If I disappear, Steven's going to jump in. We've
no
been dealing with
worries.
thunderstorms and flooding and stuff lately, but luckily we're okay. Um, so that those alone are louder than the average hi-hats, but of course I got used to them and I'm really
Mhm.
great with dynamics, but still that was 1982 or 3.
Yep.
This is 2025, and I'm still playing those hi-hats on that kit. So it kind of makes sense. If I remember right, my wife would probably remember better than I would. I think I have 12% loss in this year and 22 in this one, I think.
So I would push back a little bit on that because there's no standard way of giving a percentage to hearing loss. A
Okay.
lot of times those numbers are rooted in the word understanding of each ear, because we'll
Okay.
test how loud does sound need to be for your ear to detect it. And then what does the brain do with the sound once it gets it from each individual ear? So
Oh, okay.
could be that you had 88% word understanding in one ear and 76%, 78% in the other ear. And maybe that's where that percentage was
Maybe.
rooted in.
This was in 2019 at the 2019 NAMM show in Nashville, and I went to an audiologist, and he did some testing in a sound booth, and all I remember is frequency testing, and then he had a chart, and he
Do you know
told
who
me
you saw there?
I don't remember. I can look it up though. Yeah, I don't remember. I'll
Right.
let you know. And maybe I have those numbers wrong, because that sounds like a lot to me. Like 12% sounds like a lot, let alone 22. But for some reason, those numbers are stuck in my head. But I need to see you folks on the
Come
East
out to
Coast.
New Jersey.
Yeah, you could test it, and
We could
that
tell
way,
you.
yeah, I can get people lined up to get tested. We could do a pop-up event.
There you go.
I actually want to point out a myth on this graph here. If you look at this ear canal, there's absolutely no wax in this ear canal. And
Yeah, what's up with that?
This gives people the impression that your ear needs to be completely clean, and people obsess over the idea of getting wax out of their ears, and they're constantly sticking Q-tips in. Whoever's listening, please don't stick Q-tips in your ears.
Right.
You might be pushing wax in further, and then it's harder to get it out, and it's more likely to plug up your ear. But also, it is healthy to have a degree of wax in your ear.
It's a protectant, isn't it? To a degree,
Exactly.
like mucus.
Exactly. It's anything that is unwanted, it's making sure it gets out, and it's just keeping the ear. It is a method of hygiene for the ear, even if it doesn't look that way. So we definitely want some earwax. So ignore the picture that has a spotlessly clean ear canal.
Interesting. Let's talk about the hygiene of the ear. I believe it says on most packages, and no one pays attention. Everyone goes with what they were told by their mommy when they were little, and that is, you got to clean the inside ear, like you're saying. But most packages do say don't stick in your ear. It's for swabbing all these weird shapes that we see there to clean the ear, not the ear canal. Talk about the best ways to take care of it, and how do we know how much wax is too much, when it affects our hearing, when it looks gross? Does it smell like eggs? Like, what's the deal?
So I would start off by saying, Eric will certainly add to it, if you don't stick a Q-tip in, because we have had horror stories of people who were cleaning out their ear, and then they answer the phone and they stick the Q-tip right in, and you really can damage the eardrum that way. And it can lead for fluid to leak out. You really don't want to puncture the eardrum that way. So I would say, for people who are prone to getting wax in their ears, probably the best mechanism is to either see your primary care doctor or an ENT. They have tools to professionally take out earwax. For a way to do it at home, which should definitely be approved by a doctor, there are over-the-counter drops that you can stick in just to help drain some of the fluid. Some of the earwax. It can loosen it so that it can kind of slide out on its own.
Yeah.
But
what about wicking with a flame? That sort of weird thing. Are you familiar with that?
Not something we recommend.
Okay.
As Michelle was talking about, some of those drops that we recommend for patients are peroxide based, and that can help to loosen up the wax and break it down, so that if you do see your medical professional to have the wax removed, it's an easier process. A lot of times when you hear horror stories about wax removal, it's that it's been sitting in there, it's dried, it binds to the skin, and it can be painful getting removed. So if you do use drops ahead of time, and you can ask when you schedule with your provider, should you use peroxide drops before the appointment, that can help to loosen it up and just make it easier to come out.
Okay. Let's talk about, is there anything else you want to show on the diagram? And I can always pull it back up if you want to exemplify something with any other questions. But before we move on to another question I have, is there anything else on there you want to point out?
I would say the one thing we didn't talk about and we is actually the middle portion of the ear, right by the eardrum. A lot of kids get ear infections. The reason why they get ear infections is because there is a tube at the bottom of the diagram. You see something called the eustachian tube, and that can drain any gunk, any fluid, any congestion outside of the middle ear space. And in children, that tube is much more horizontal and flat, and it's harder for it to drain out as opposed to an adult where the tube is much more diagonal. So the gunk can all flow out very easily. But for a child, the gunk can kind of sit there, and that can create fluid buildup and lead to an ear infection. So why do kids tend to get more ear infections than adults? It's based on the anatomy of the middle ear, that tube will start to become flat and get more diagonal as the child ages.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. What is if you could give a weight somehow to all things being equal as far as volume, whatever that volume is, explain what's more damaging and why, higher frequencies versus lower frequencies. It's always my understanding that lower frequencies cause your eardrum to vibrate more. And is that part of it, or is that a myth as well that's causing damage?
What matters is the intensity of the sound at the eardrum.
Okay.
So different pitches can cause damage. It's all about the intensity at the eardrum. So we get asked all the time, does it matter if I wear over the ear or in the ear headphones? Doesn't matter. Only matters what the intensity is at the eardrum. Does it matter if I'm near the drums or if I'm near the electric guitar when I'm on stage? Doesn't matter. Only matters the intensity at the eardrum.
So, Eric, if I may, when you say intensity of the eardrum of the sound, do you mean like the smooth sound wave versus a real crunchy, staticky?
I just mean the physical, the dB level of the sound at the eardrum is all that matters in terms of that damage. Because it doesn't matter if it's a 20 hertz tone at a level that is a safe volume versus a 4,000 hertz tone at a level that's a safe volume. It's the intensity at the eardrum. That's what we need to know to, one, be able to tell you how much time can you be exposed to that degree, that level of intensity without risking hearing loss. That's what we need to know. Time exposure and intensity.
Thank you. When we talked about those receptors picking up the frequencies and then transferring that to the brain, is there a way to reverse damage, or is it like a scar? Once a scar is scarred, it's a scar. Are there supplements or anything like that to reverse it?
No.
Not
the unsatisfactory answer is no. That once the damage is done, and there are certain forms, if it's through age, it's unavoidable. The only way to really protect yourself or prevent hearing loss is if you're in a place with a lot of noise exposure, to make sure that you're properly protecting your ears. That is the only way to make sure that your hearing doesn't progress.
Now, you will sometimes notice with noise exposure, let's say you happen to be at a really loud concert or you're right by the stacks and you don't have ear protection and you leave that show, you might notice tinnitus ringing in your ears, but you also might notice that your ears feel clogged. That clogged feeling in your ears is what we call a temporary threshold shift. Those cells that receive sound, that vibrate in response to the sound, they get kind of misshapen and stop functioning efficiently. And that time period, maybe a day or two, where your ear feels clogged, are those cells kind of getting back into their normal state. So that's called a temporary threshold shift. That can improve, but the more times you subject yourself to a temporary threshold shift, the greater the likelihood is that you're going to have permanent hearing loss. And as Michelle was saying, once you have permanent hearing loss, it is permanent.
Wow. That condition you just described, I remember experiencing it for the first time. And folks, don't be so shy. Like, ask questions. You got to have questions. I think they're afraid to admit they're having hearing issues. But I remember
that. Yeah, that's common.
Oh, I got over that vanity like a couple of years ago, finally, when someone said to me, you're doing everyone around you a disservice. Get hearing aids. And like that hit me differently. And I don't think I wasn't getting hearing aids because of a vanity reason. I thought, I don't know, maybe I just thought it wasn't that bad.
One thing I like to remind my patients of who we're recommending hearing aids to, and they're very hesitant or they're just not ready for it. They may not want people to see the hearing aids, but the people around you, they do see the hearing loss. So it's
and
not
hear
a
it.
secret.
Yeah, I love that. And there should not be anything attached to vanity. It's such a I'm getting new hearing aids, and we'll talk about that on an episode so you can help direct me. But when I had the hearing aids I had before one of my dogs chewed them up, it was life-changing. And not just for me. And they weren't even expensive ones. They didn't have any special features. They didn't Bluetooth. They were around $100. Like my wife said, let's just get you something to see how it feels. And all. It was life-changing. And I remember like walking from my office, different part of the house, through the dining room and kitchen. And I stopped. And she saw me going like, she's like, what? I said, shh. I said, what is that? She said, what's what? I said, and I kind of like emulated she said, that's called our air conditioner. I'm like, oh my God, really? Like I had never heard that sound before. It was just crazy. And you don't wear hearing aids. At the opening of the show, I talked about being at a noisy restaurant, the cacophony. That's not where you wear hearing aids because everything.
Well, you can because
with the right ones though, right?
Yes, the newer technology can help to separate speech from noise. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And could it do the opposite in case you don't want to hear what someone's saying?
There's a mute button.
Oh, I need that.
The difference between hearing aids and amplifiers is that amplifiers will just make everything louder.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's useful, that just everything gets louder. But for other people, if you amplify the noise, everything sounds pretty bad. So that's hearing aids are a little bit more targeted than that, where they target the frequencies where there is loss and they don't amplify anything where there is no loss. This way it's more balanced and you are exclusively hearing what you want to be, or I shouldn't say exclusively, it's not foolproof, but you are more likely to be hearing what you want to be hearing above the surrounding noise.
Thank you. That's real helpful. Going back to what Eric said about that condition of that temporary, feeling like your ears are plugged. The very first time I experienced that was my first professional concert I ever saw, and that was Led Zeppelin. That was 1977. My dad took me. I was 14. I was 14. And what the funny thing is we got out of the LA Forum, we got in the car, and we didn't know it started. And my dad kept turning the ignition till finally he detected that, because we just couldn't hear that. We could not hear. That was the first time we ever experienced sound that loud. And then over the years, for me, it just kind of became the norm to a degree, going to so many concerts over the years, being a gigging musician and even rehearsing louder than we should. And then consequently turning favorite songs up on road trips and, over and over that bad exposure. It's like not stopping cigarettes or beginning to smoke more. It was kind of just doing, no pun intended, an amplified damage as time went on. And now I'm doing my best to back it up. But I'd love to, on the next episode, talk about the different types of hearing protection and what different benefits are, what limitations are with some of them, because I know that there's people, I'm included, that could use hearing protection, not even just for going to concerts, just for going to a bar, where a band is playing, or a club, or there was a restaurant where my wife and I went to, and the music was so loud, we left before we even ordered. And I'm not a weenie when it comes to loud sounds, but it just wasn't a fun, comfortable eating environment. It must have been for those kids, because we were just like out of there.
We keep our earplugs on our keychains.
Yeah. We'll talk about those different varieties, and if there's room, we'll come prepared to talk about different kinds of hearing aids, unless you think that should be a whole other show. And folks will be prepared with images and explaining what works best for who and different varieties. And I'm sure what's the pricing like all over the map for things that are not just amplifiers, but things that actually have useful features, what about is the price range? Is it, I'm going to guess, is it like $300 to $2,500 for decent hearing aids that do things?
So it can be in that sort of range. Some can even be more expensive than that. It also depends when you purchase hearing aids. Are you buying just the devices, or are you buying the devices and follow-up care with the devices? So if you're buying devices and follow-up care, they tend to be more expensive, but oftentimes a better value over the long term.
And the follow-up care, this is going to be a silly, naive question. Is the follow-up care for my ears or for my hearing aids to take care of them?
Usually it's in regard to the hearing aids themselves.
Okay.
But it can also relate to your actual hearing and ears. So if your hearing has changed, we usually recommend getting a hearing test every 1 to 2 years just to monitor it. Has it been stable? Has it changed? Let's say your hearing has changed. Then it's our job to adjust the hearing aids to reflect that, to reflect your change in hearing. Other times your hearing hasn't changed, but you want it different. You want it to sound louder or sharper or clearer, or you don't like the tinniness or the brightness of sounds and you want it changed. Cleanings, the hearing aids can get dirty, and as much as we like to hope people keep them clean, either due to not necessarily paying attention to keeping them clean, or even just dexterity issues that they physically can't keep them clean, they can't do the work, then you go see a professional to help with that.
That's
I think
great.
another topic that would make sense for us to touch on would be in-ear monitors, because there's a lot of misconceptions about in-ear monitors, and there's also a lot of things that musicians don't like about them, that technology and certain features exist to work around those common complaints that we hear. So there's really a lot we could do with in-ear monitors to get specific musicians what they need, because what the drummer needs can differ from what the lead singer needs, can differ from what the lead guitarist needs. So we have those conversations in depth with our musician patients to get a good fit for them.
And when you mention those items, you're not just referring to what the mix is in their inner monitors, but just what the functionalities do that someone might prefer over another.
Correct. Yeah. What we like, one of the first questions I like to ask my musician patients who have experience with monitors is, tell me what you didn't like about them. Because if I know what you didn't like about your past sets, I might be able to make recommendations that are going to allow for a more comfortable fit, and maybe allow you to keep both of them in instead of taking one out. That you'll see singers oftentimes take one out. You'll see horn players take one out. Some guitarists will take them out when they're soloing. They see all different things, but the more we know about your stage situation, your needs, and what you don't like with your past experiences, the better we can make recommendations to try and keep your ears healthy for the longest period of time.
That's great. Is there, can you, either of you cite 1 to 3 of the most common complaints that drummers specifically have given for in-ear monitors because they had the wrong ones for what they want or what they need?
So I'll take this one if you don't mind.
Please.
Drummers oftentimes tend to be the easiest on stage to work with.
My wife's got to hear this.
Because you're sitting in the most sound, especially like a lot of setups where there'll be the plexiglass around the drummer, and you're really keeping that sound in your space. So there's oftentimes just that recognition of needing a good seal with the monitors so that you have isolation, and then your engineer is creating the mix that you need. But the biggest thing for a drummer is going to be a good fit to create isolation.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're moving around a lot and all of that. And the drummers, not always, but often they're more center stage. So they're central to where all that sound is, whether it's
everything
monitor
around them.
Yeah. Interesting. I remember, and I'm curious how this translates to inner monitors. And then I have one other question about inner monitors. I remember I don't remember, 20 years ago or so, the band Rush Geddy Lee stopped using on-stage speaker cabinets, and they instead replaced it with wash machines one year and a refrigerator, another year giant vending machines that were rotisserie chicken. They had to put something there. and his mix, they did two things. He had a great mix in his inner monitors. I don't know what brand, but on either side of the stage, they put these, I forgot what model they were, but they put giant bass monitors on the side of the stage just so they could physically feel the vibrations in the floor and their body to kind of make up from his onstage gear not being there for them. So that's one thing I noticed that I really learned that I thought was really interesting. Sometimes I'll be watching a video of a concert or people playing on stage, and maybe the guitar player and the bass player will get close to each other. They'll both have inner monitors in, and I see them say something to the other. How can they hear each other if, you know what I'm getting at? The music's in your inner monitors, which is a good seal. I've known because what's going on there?
Good question.
So there's two ways that they're going to be communicating on stage. Well, three ways maybe. There might be hand signals that are going to be familiar. You're playing with the band for 25 years. You all just know each other's preferences. Could be that they're reading lips, but what's most likely is they can have their stage mic system that's not connected to the PA that can be fed into the in-ear mix. So, for example, in between songs, you'll oftentimes see bands talking with each other. They might have either separate mics on stage that they'll lean into, mic? Or they'll have a lapel mic.
Oh, wow.
That is how they're communicating on stage. So, hey, you're starting solo 4 bars right now. Boom, go.
Yeah.
So that's likely what's happening, is that they're communicating through their stage mic system that's not going out to the PA, but that's filtered into their mix.
Okay, that solves that mystery, because I was like, how is she hearing him? What's going on there?
Yeah.
Okay, that's neat. I love that. What do you each have for, and it doesn't have to be the most common advice. Well, obviously don't listen to music too loud, but what advice would you like to give, one nugget from each of you, to concert goers, club goers, musicians, people who just listen to stuff loud, to take care of their hearing and to really pay attention to what's going on?
I would say that it's been very helpful to...
Whoops, where'd you go? There you are. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
All good. I find it very helpful ever since I've been either using on my phone, on an iPhone, they now have a scale that can show you if you're starting to enter dangerous territory, or the Apple Watch now, you can actually see it'll give you notifications if something is getting to be too loud. I also have an app on my phone where I monitor to see how loud something is. And I take it, I measure all kinds of environments, more than I probably need to, but it gives me not just an idea if something is damaging or has the potential to cause damage, but it gives me just a sense of how loud things are in general that I would not have otherwise known. How loud is the subway when it rolls by? How loud is a Broadway show? Just so that it gives me an idea of, this is how loud something is that doesn't sound too loud. If it's louder than this, it might start to get a little bit too loud. So try to monitor it, even if it's just on your phone, even if it's just on your Apple Watch. See what it says, because it might actually be helpful to you either in the current environment or something in the future.
Do you have an app that you recommend in the App Store?
I use the, Eric, do you pronounce the NIOSH app?
Yeah.
NIOSH app.
What's it called again?
NIOSH.
Sound level meter. Yep.
I got it. Okay, I'm getting it
free.
Now. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Very helpful. There you go, folks. How about you, Eric? Do you have one?
So I think the best piece of advice I can give you, and yes, it's wear ear protection, but wear the right ear protection. And what I mean by that is, for musicians, whether you're going to concerts, Broadway, rehearsing, practicing, get specific musician ear protection. They come with filters that give equal sound attenuation. When Dan had mentioned earlier, those foam plugs, those block out high frequencies more than lows. So they tend to create a perception of distortion. But if you have ear protection that takes everything down, all frequencies a very, very similar amount, then what actually happens is you hear the music better, because loud sound creates distortion within the ear and you don't actually hear quite as well. So if you're using ear protection that is balanced to attenuate all frequencies equally, you will hear the music better.
Very interesting. Thanks. So there you go, folks. Our inaugural episode, our debut episode of Plugged into Hearing Health. Get it? Get it? And follow Drum Talk TV's channels on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, and Vimeo, and TikTok, and find out when we're doing all these different episodes. Another real easy way is to sign up for our email list, which you can do at drumtalktv.com. You can do it on the Drum Talk TV Facebook page with the sign up button, or go to www.drumtalktv Brilliance, our membership site, get a free membership or a paid one, less than a bucket of chicken a month. And if you sign up there, you'll also get all of our notifications for everything we do. And we have an events calendar on that site, drumtalktvbrilliance.com. Dr. Michelle, Dr. Eric, thank you so much. This has been great. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you soon. And if you have questions, ask questions in the comments, even on the archive, because they're going to receive the links to the episode. Thanks, everybody.